The risotto was wrong. Sarah could smell it from across the kitchen, that bitter, scorched note cutting through the steam and shouting. She kept her eyes down, hands submerged in gray dishwater, but her body had already tensed. Gustav was plating the risotto Nero, and it was wrong. Not just slightly off. Fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. The kind of wrong that would end careers. The kind of wrong that, if served to the man waiting in the dining room, would destroy everyone in this kitchen, including her. She scrubbed harder at the burnt copper pan in her hands, the steel wool tearing at residue that had been baked on for hours. Her shoulders hunched forward, making herself smaller, invisible. That's what she'd become good at over 3 years, disappearing, surviving. But she couldn't stop listening. "Liam!" Gustav's voice cracked like a whip. "Where's the cuttlefish ink? Why isn't this black enough?" Sarah's jaw clenched. The ink wasn't the problem. The ink was never the problem. "Chef, I put it in, I swear." "You put in nothing." A metal spoon clattered against tile. "This is gray. Do you know who's out there? Do you have any concept of what will happen if—" The sentence died unfinished, swallowed by panic. Sarah knew exactly who was out there. Everyone did. Ethan Caldwell, billionaire, tech mogul, and the most feared restaurant critic in North America. The man who'd walked into Lubli an hour ago and ordered one dish. Just one. Risotto Nero, his grandmother's recipe. The dish that, according to whispered legend, he used to test whether a chef possessed actual soul, or just skill purchased from culinary school and built on arrogance. Gustav possessed neither. Sarah lifted her hands from the water. They were scarred, the skin across her knuckles tight and shiny from burns that had never quite healed right. She stared at them for 3 seconds. Then she heard it. The soft click of a plate being set on the pass. "Service!" Gustav's voice, steadier now, performing confidence he didn't feel. No, he couldn't. Sarah's head snapped up just as Arthur, the general manager, appeared in the kitchen doorway. His face was pale, his expensive suit wrinkled at the collar. He looked at Gustav, then at the plate, then, for just a heartbeat, at Sarah. She shook her head, a tiny, desperate movement. Arthur looked away. "Risotto Nero," Gustav announced, "for Mr. Caldwell." The kitchen held its breath. 3 years ago, Sarah Miller had been someone. Not just someone. Someone exceptional. The youngest sous chef ever nominated for the James Beard Rising Star Award. 23 years old and already legendary in Chicago's culinary circles. Cooking beside her father at the hearth, their restaurant, their dream, built together from nothing. She could still remember the weight of a knife in her hand back then. The confidence, the certainty that every choice she made would land perfectly because she understood food in a way that couldn't be taught. Her father used to say she had a gift. He used to say a lot of things. Deep breath. The fire took 6 hours to extinguish. The building, a beautiful converted warehouse they'd spent 2 years renovating, collapsed inward like a broken promise. Her father survived physically. For 3 months. Then, his heart gave out, the doctor said. Stress-related cardiac event. But Sarah knew the truth. Grief. Betrayal. The weight of watching everything you built turn to ash while your daughter stood accused of setting the match. She didn't do it. She didn't. But insurance investigators found irregularities. Rumors spread, whispered at first, then shouted. A jealous competitor suggested she'd been trying to hide financial problems. A health inspector mentioned a contentious interaction weeks before. Gustav's uncle, Sterling Thorne, who'd been trying to buy their property for months, told anyone who would listen that the Miller family had gotten in over their heads. No charges were ever filed. No one had to. In the culinary world, reputation is everything, and hers was burned cleaner than the restaurant. Sarah grabbed a clean pan from the drying rack and moved toward the prep station. Liam was there, 17 years old, hands shaking as he tried to brunoise carrots. He was crying silently, tears dripping onto the cutting board. "Hey!" Sarah's voice was soft. She touched his shoulder. "Breathe." "I'm going to get fired," he whispered. "I'm going to get fired and it's my fault. I should have—" "It's not your fault." She picked up a carrot. Her knife moved in a blur. Perfect cubes, uniform, precise, muscle memory. "None of this is your fault." She'd been teaching him quietly for months. How to hold his knife. How to taste as he cooked, not just follow recipes. How to move through a kitchen with intention instead of panic. He was talented. Actually talented. He deserved better than this. They all did. Sarah glanced toward the dining room doors. Beyond them, Ethan Caldwell sat alone at table 7. She couldn't see him from here, but she could feel him. That particular silence that powerful people carry, the kind that makes everyone around them perform and stumble and forget how to breathe normally. She'd met him once before, 5 years ago when she was still Sarah Miller, chef and daughter and future. He'd eaten at the Hearth on a random Tuesday night, ordered off menu, asked for whatever the chef recommended. Her father had been sick that night, just a cold, nothing serious, so Sarah had cooked for Caldwell herself. She'd made him polenta with braised rabbit and pickled cherries. Simple, honest, the kind of dish that revealed everything about a cook's instincts. He'd left a note with his payment. "Whoever made this will change the industry." Sarah dried her hands on her apron. That note was still in a box somewhere, packed with everything else from her old life. The life that ended in fire and accusation, the life she'd buried when she showed up in New York with a fake resume and a new last name. Johnson. Sarah Johnson. Dishwasher. Invisible. But Ethan Caldwell remembered. She'd seen it in his eyes when he walked past her earlier tonight, that flicker of recognition he'd suppressed immediately. He knew, or suspected, and now Gustav had just served him a dish that would confirm every terrible thing anyone had ever whispered about this restaurant. What would Ethan do? Sarah already knew. The plate came back untouched, not rejected, not pushed aside with a disgusted comment. Untouched. Arthur returned to the kitchen carrying it like a bomb. His hands trembled. Gustav stared at him, face draining of color. "He didn't eat it? He didn't touch it." Arthur set the plate down on the counter with a soft clink that seemed to echo. He looked at it for 30 seconds, then he asked to speak with the chef. The kitchen went silent. "What did he say?" Gustav's voice had gone thin. "He said—" Arthur swallowed. "He said, 'This is not risotto Nero. This is an insult to my grandmother's memory, and I'd like to know which coward made it.'" Coward. Sarah felt the word like a hand around her throat. She knew that dish. She knew it. Ethan's grandmother had been Lucia Moretti, an Italian immigrant who'd run a tiny restaurant in Brooklyn for 40 years. Her risotto was legendary in certain circles. Never written down, passed only to family, prepared maybe 3 times a year for special occasions. Sarah had learned it once, years ago, from a chef who'd worked under Lucia before she died. It was subtle, delicate. The rice had to be toasted until it smelled like hazelnuts. The stock, fish and shellfish, never vegetable, had to reduce 3 times. The ink went in at the end, folded gently so it marbled through the rice like storm clouds. Gustav's version had been gray, bitter, the rice overcooked into paste. He'd treated it like any other risotto. And now Ethan Caldwell was waiting. Gustav straightened his jacket, lifted his chin. "Arthur, tell Mr. Caldwell I'll be right out. And bring him wine, something expensive, on the house." "Gustav?" "Now." Arthur left. Gustav turned toward the kitchen staff. Liam, the line cooks, the prep team, all of them frozen, watching him, waiting for the explosion everyone knew was coming. "Clean this up," Gustav said quietly. "All of it. If anyone asks what happened tonight, you say, nothing. Understood?" No one answered. "Understood?" A few heads nodded. Gustav walked toward the dining room. Sarah stood at the sink, her scarred hands gripping the edge of the counter. Her mind was moving too fast, calculating, weighing consequences. She'd made Lucia's risotto twice in her life. Once as practice, once for a private dinner where a collector paid $5,000 for the experience. She could make it again. She could make it right. There was stock in the walk-in. Fish stock she'd started yesterday using bones and shells the kitchen had thrown away. Gustav didn't even know it existed. She'd made it out of habit, the way some people doodle or pace. Cooking was the only thing that quieted her mind anymore. The rice was in dry storage. Carnaroli, the good kind. She'd seen it this morning. The ink. Liam was standing next to her suddenly, his young face desperate and earnest. "Sarah," he whispered, "you could do it. You could make the real version. I know you could." She looked at him. This kid who'd figured out months ago that she wasn't just a dishwasher, who'd watched her fix other people's mistakes when she thought no one was looking, who'd tasted the staff meals she made, simple food, perfectly executed, and understood something was deeply wrong with the hierarchy of this kitchen. "If I do that," Sarah said softly, "everything changes." It's already changed. Liam's eyes were wet. He's going to destroy us. All of us. The restaurant will close. We'll all lose our jobs, unless someone gives him what he actually came for. They pause. Through the kitchen doors, Sarah could hear voices rising. Gustav's, defensive and sharp. Ethan's, cold and precise. She had maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Her hands moved before her mind fully decided. She grabbed a pot, turned on the burner, started pulling ingredients from the walk-in with movements so practiced they felt like breathing. Liam stared at her. "Get me the squid ink," Sarah said, "and don't let anyone see you." The rice hit the oil with a soft hiss. Sarah's wrist rotated in small circles, keeping everything moving, watching the grains turn translucent at the edges. Listening. The sound would tell her when it was ready, that moment when the starch began to open, becoming receptive to liquid, to flavor, to transformation. She could still hear Gustav in the dining room. His voice had taken on that particular pitch of someone drowning while pretending to swim. "My interpretation of the recipe, Mr. Caldwell. A modern approach that respects tradition while—" "Your interpretation?" Ethan's voice cut through like a blade through butter. "Tell me, Chef Thorne, what temperature should the stock be when you add it to risotto?" Silence. "Boiling? Simmering? Room temperature?" It depends on the—" "It doesn't depend on anything. There's a correct answer." "Would you like to try again?" Sarah added the first ladle of stock. It steamed, bubbling gently as it absorbed. The smell hit her. Ocean and earth and memory. Her father's kitchen, Sunday mornings, his hands guiding hers, teaching her to listen to food, to have a conversation with ingredients instead of just following instructions. She blinked hard. Liam appeared at her elbow with the squid ink. His hands had stopped shaking. "What else?" "Watch the door," Sarah whispered. "If Arthur comes back, stall him." The other cooks were frozen at their stations, watching her. She could feel their stares, the questions forming, but no one spoke. She added another ladle, stirred. The rhythm was meditative, hypnotic. She'd made risotto 1,000 times, but this one mattered in a way that made her hands want to tremble. She forced them steady. In the dining room, Ethan was still dissecting Gustav. Where does cuttlefish ink come from, Chef Thorne? What part of the animal? The ink sac, obviously. And how does that affect the flavor profile differently than squid ink? Another pause. They're essentially the same. They're not. Ethan's voice had gone soft, dangerous. Cuttlefish ink is sweeter, richer, less metallic. Any chef who'd actually worked with Lucia Moretti's recipe would know that, because she was specific, obsessively specific, about every element. Sarah's throat tightened. She remembered now. Lucia had used squid ink, not cuttlefish, despite cuttlefish being more expensive, more prized, because squid ink had that particular mineral edge, like the sea itself, that balanced the sweetness of the shellfish stock. Ethan knew the recipe. Really knew it. Which meant he wasn't just testing Gustav's skill. He was hunting for someone else. Someone who would understand what he was really asking for. Sarah added the final ladle of stock, watched it disappear into the rice. The grains had begun to release their starch, creating that creamy, flowing texture that was neither soup nor solid. Perfect. She turned off the heat, reached for the squid ink. The bottle was small, dark glass, the liquid inside blacker than anything else in the kitchen. She measured carefully, just enough to color the risotto, to give it that deep, mysterious darkness. Too much, and it would taste like ocean floor. Too little, and it would look like what Gustav had made. Gray. Cowardly. She folded the ink through the rice with a wooden spoon, watching storm clouds bloom through white grains. The risotto transformed, deepened, became something ancient and elemental. Her father's voice echoed. Risotto Nero isn't black because of the ink, sweetheart. It's black because of secrets. Every family has them. You cook them into the rice and people taste the weight of what's been carried. Sarah plated the dish. Simple white bowl, the risotto glossy, moving like silk when she tilted it. She added a whisper of good olive oil, 3 microgreens for color, just enough to prove this wasn't about showing off. It was perfect. It was right. She stared at it for 5 seconds, then picked up the bowl with scarred hands and walked toward the dining room. Arthur nearly knocked her over. He stumbled back through the kitchen doors, face flushed, eyes wide. "What are you... Sarah?" She didn't stop walking. "Sarah, what is that?" "You can't... Gustav will..." Gustav already failed. Her voice was steady, calm, like she was discussing prep lists or delivery schedules. Everyone in this building knows it, including Mr. Caldwell. "But you're I'm a cook." She met his eyes. "That's all I've ever been." She pushed through the doors into the dining room. The space felt different at night, quieter. Most tables were empty. Only a handful of wealthy patrons remained, nursing wine and dessert, pretending not to watch the disaster unfolding at table 7. Ethan Caldwell sat alone. His suit was expensive but understated. His hands were folded on the white tablecloth. He was maybe 45, with iron gray hair and the kind of face that gave nothing away. Gustav stood beside the table, rigid, his chef's whites stained with sweat. Ethan looked up as Sarah approached. Their eyes met, and she watched him recognize her. Not as Sarah Johnson, dishwasher, as Sarah Miller, the ghost. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Surprise, followed immediately by calculation. "Mr. Caldwell," Sarah said quietly. She set the bowl in front of him. "Risotto Nero, your grandmother's recipe." Gustav's head snapped toward her. "What are you... Be quiet." Ethan didn't raise his voice, didn't even look at Gustav. But the command landed like a hammer. Gustav's mouth clicked shut. Ethan picked up his fork, lifted a small amount of risotto, studied it. The color, the texture, the way it moved. Then he tasted it. Pause. Sarah watched his face. Ethan closed his eyes. For 10 seconds, he didn't move, didn't speak. Just sat there, fork halfway to the bowl, something unreadable crossing his features. When he opened his eyes again, they were wet. "My grandmother," he said softly, "used to make this every Christmas, just for family, never for the restaurant. She said it was too personal, too full of ghosts." He took another bite. "She died when I was 16. I've spent 20 years searching for someone who could recreate it, really recreate it, not imitate, not approximate." He set down his fork. "This is perfect, which means you didn't learn it from a cookbook or another chef." Sarah said nothing. "You learned it from someone who learned it from her, which means you've been hiding more than just your ability to make risotto." He turned to Gustav. "Chef Thorne, tell me, did you make this dish?" Gustav's jaw worked. I supervised." "Did you make this dish?" "The kitchen is my responsibility. Answer the question." Gustav's face flushed dark red. "No." "Then who did?" Silence. Ethan looked at Sarah. "What's your name?" She could lie, should lie, could walk away right now, disappear back into the kitchen, rebuild her walls of invisibility. But she was so tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of scrubbing other people's pans. Tired of watching incompetence destroy people who deserved better. Sarah Miller. The name hung in the air like smoke. Gustav inhaled sharply. "You're the arsonist? The one who—" "She's not an arsonist." Ethan's voice went cold. "She's the most talented chef I've encountered in a decade, and you've had her washing your dishes." He stood. The restaurant went silent. "I came here tonight," Ethan said, his voice carrying to every table, "because I'd heard rumors, whispers about a ghost working in this kitchen, someone who fixed mistakes no one else noticed, someone who taught the junior staff what they should have learned from their head chef." He looked at Gustav. "Someone who possessed the one thing you'll never have." "And what's that?" Gustav's voice shook with fury and fear. "A soul." Pause. Ethan turned back to Sarah. "I'm going to make you an offer. But first, I need to know something. Can you cook under pressure? Real pressure. Not just perfect risotto when you have time to think. Can you lead a kitchen through chaos and still produce something extraordinary?" Sarah's heart was pounding. "Yes. Prove it." "How?" Ethan checked his watch. "You have 1 hour, 3 courses. Use only what's currently in this kitchen. No premium ingredients. No special orders. Cook for me. If what you make convinces me you're ready, I'll clear your debts, restore your reputation, and fund your return to the industry. And if I fail, you leave cooking forever." The words landed like stones. "This is insane." Gustav's voice had gone shrill. "You can't just... She's not even a real chef. She's a criminal." "Actually," Ethan said, pulling out his phone, "she's not. Would you like to see the investigation report I commissioned 3 years ago? The real one. Not the convenient fiction your uncle's private investigator created." Gustav froze. "That's right," Ethan continued. "I know about Sterling. About the property deal. About the fire that wasn't arson but was classified as suspicious just long enough to tank the insurance payout and force a sale." He showed Gustav the phone screen. "It's all here, documented, time-stamped, including the inspector who was bribed to falsify his initial report." Sarah's vision blurred. You knew?" "I suspected." Ethan turned to her. "The timeline never made sense. The hearth was thriving. You had investors lining up, and then suddenly, fire, death, bankruptcy. Too convenient, too fast. So I hired people to look deeper." "Why?" Her voice cracked. Why would you do that? Because 20 years ago, my grandmother told me something before she died. She said, Ethan, you'll meet maybe 3 chefs in your lifetime who cook with truth. Not skill, not ego, truth. When you find them, protect them, because the industry will try to destroy them. He looked at her steadily. You're one of the 3. Gustav made a strangled sound. You can't prove any of... I can prove all of it. And I will. But first... Ethan gestured toward the kitchen. Miss Miller has a challenge to complete, unless you'd prefer to test your cooking against hers. Gustav's face went white. That's what I thought. Ethan sat back down. You have 1 hour, Sarah. I suggest you start now. Sarah turned toward the kitchen. Her mind was racing. 3 courses, 1 hour, limited ingredients. She could do this. She had to do this. But as she pushed through the doors, she heard Gustav's voice behind her, low and venomous. If you think this ends well for you, you're as stupid as your father was. Sarah stopped, turned. What did you say? Gustav smiled. It was the ugliest expression she'd ever seen. You really think the fire was an accident? You think my uncle just got lucky? He stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. I was there, the night before, while your father was at that charity event and you were home with the flu. I walked through the hearth, such a beautiful space, so much exposed wood, and that century-old electrical panel in the basement that you kept meaning to replace. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. One tiny adjustment, Gustav whispered. 1 wire, moved just slightly out of place, just enough to overheat overnight, to smolder in the walls where no one would notice until it was too late. His eyes glittered. Your father never knew. He died thinking you'd failed him, thinking maybe, secretly, you had started that fire. Some part of him doubted you until the very end. Something inside Sarah went very cold, very quiet. You're confessing. Her voice was steady, emotionless. Right now, to arson and manslaughter. I'm not confessing anything. It's your word against mine. Gustav glanced toward the dining room. And even if Caldwell has some report, proving I was physically there means nothing. I consulted on dozens of restaurants. It's what I do. Except... Ethan's voice came from directly behind Gustav. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, holding his phone up, the screen glowing. I've been recording this entire conversation. And conspiracy to commit arson, murder by arson, insurance fraud, and obstruction of justice are all crimes I'm confident the Manhattan DA will be very interested in prosecuting. Gustav's smile died. I've been waiting 3 years for you to slip. Ethan's voice was cold as winter. For you to get arrogant enough, comfortable enough to say something actionable. Thank you for finally giving me what I needed. He dialed a number. Yes, I need to report a crime. The kitchen erupted into chaos. Gustav lunged toward Ethan, reaching for the phone. Arthur and 2 line cooks grabbed him, pulling him back. He was screaming, incoherent, desperate, the mask of arrogance finally shattered. You can't! You don't understand! It was... business! It was just... business! It was murder, Ethan said quietly. Sarah stood frozen. The words were still processing, still trying to land in her mind in a way that made sense. I was there. 1 wire, moved just slightly. Her father. The fire. The months of grief and guilt and sleepless nights wondering if she'd forgotten something, missed something, failed some basic check that would have prevented everything. It wasn't her fault. It was never her fault. Gustav had killed him for a property deal. For money. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't. Sarah. Liam's hand on her arm, gentle, worried. Sarah, you're shaking. She looked down. He was right. Her whole body was trembling. I need... Her voice came out strangled. I need to... Cook, Ethan said. He'd ended his phone call. Police were coming, but he was looking at her with something that might have been understanding. You need to cook. It's the only thing that will help right now. I can't. You can. His voice was firm. 3 courses, 1 hour. Not for me, for you. To prove to yourself that he didn't take this from you. Sarah's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Ethan stepped closer. Your father loved you. He never doubted you, not for 1 second. And wherever he is right now, he's watching. He's waiting. Show him what you've become. Deep breath. Sarah wiped her eyes, looked around the kitchen. Liam was still beside her. The line cooks, young, terrified, but watching her with something new in their eyes. Not pity, not fear. Hope. Arthur had released Gustav, who stood hunched and broken against the wall, waiting for sirens. This kitchen. These people. They'd survived under cruelty and incompetence. They'd endured because they had no choice. But they deserved better. They deserved to see what a kitchen could be when it was run with integrity. Sarah turned to the walk-in. Liam, show me what we have. Everything? Everything. The walk-in was chaos. Half-rotted vegetables pushed to the back. Good produce buried under careless organization. Premium ingredients locked away in Gustav's private section. Hoarded and wasted. Sarah started pulling things out, creating order from disaster. Beets, she said. These beets are still good. And, Liam, are these duck breasts? Yeah. Gustav bought them 2 weeks ago for a special menu that never happened. Salvageable? Liam checked. Barely. They're close to turning. We'll use them. Sarah's mind was moving faster now, calculating, building. First course, roasted beet salad with preserved lemon and pistachio. Simple, clean, proof that vegetables can be elegant. Second course, duck breast, seared, with a cherry gastrique and bitter greens. She was already seeing it, tasting it. It'll be just on the edge, that moment before spoilage where flavor becomes concentrated and dangerous. Beautiful risk. And third? Sarah paused. Third course, the finale. The moment that would define everything. Chocolate, she said. There's good chocolate in dry storage, dark chocolate. I saw it weeks ago. Gustav was saving it for something that never happened. What are you going to make? Deconstructed flourless chocolate cake, with espresso gelée and olive oil. Something that tastes like memory, like loss, like coming home. Pause. Liam stared at her. Sarah, that's not just cooking. That's a statement. I know. She turned back to the kitchen. 47 minutes left. The line cooks had started cleaning their stations without being asked, creating space, preparing to help. Sarah called out, Sophie, start roasting beets. High heat. Rub them with salt and olive oil. Marcus, I need you on duck prep. Score the fat, heavy salt. Let them come to room temperature. Liam, you're with me on the chocolate. They moved. No hesitation. No questions. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah felt like a chef again. Not hiding. Not compromising. Leading. The beets went into the oven with a blast of heat. She could smell them already. Earth and sugar caramelizing. Good. The duck breasts laid out on the counter, fat side up, the skin scored in careful crosshatch. Marcus had a good hand. Precise. You trained classically? Sarah asked him. CIA. Graduated last year. Why are you working here? He didn't answer immediately. Then, needed a job. Any job. Student debt. Sarah understood. After tonight, that changes, I promise. The chocolate melted slowly over a double boiler. Liam stirred, watching her. How do you know this will work? He asked quietly. I don't. But you're doing it anyway. Yes. Why? Sarah thought about her father, about the hearth, about 3 years of silence and shame. Because Gustav tried to make me believe I was broken, that the fire destroyed more than just the restaurant, that it destroyed me. She met Liam's eyes. I need to prove he was wrong. Outside, through the kitchen windows, she could hear sirens approaching. Police. Coming for Gustav. Coming to arrest the man who'd stolen everything. Sarah added espresso to the chocolate, watching it ribbon through the dark liquid. The smell was intoxicating, bitter and sweet and complex. 32 minutes left. The beets came out of the oven, skins blackened and cracked, the flesh inside jewel bright. Sarah peeled them while they were still hot, her scarred hands immune to the heat. Duck breasts went into screaming hot cast iron, fat side down. They sizzled, releasing that particular smell of richness and char. Cherry gastrique reduced on another burner, vinegar and sugar and dried cherries creating something tart and mysterious. The kitchen was symphony now, everything moving, everything connected, and Sarah was conducting. The first course went out at exactly 60 minutes. Sarah plated the beets herself, sliced thin, arranged in a spiral, preserved lemon segments nestled between, crushed pistachios scattered like autumn leaves. A whisper of good olive oil. 3 micro cilantro leaves for brightness. It looked like art. It looked like hope. Ethan tasted it in silence. The dining room had emptied except for him and 2 police officers who stood near the entrance, waiting. Gustav sat handcuffed in a chair by the bar, face blank with shock. Sarah couldn't watch Ethan eat. She turned back to the kitchen, focused on the duck. 7 minutes per side, she told Marcus. Then let it rest. Don't rush it. Yes, chef. Chef. The word landed different now, like coming home after years in exile. The duck rested under foil, juices running pink and perfect. Sarah sliced it against the grain. Thick medallions, the meat rose-colored inside, the fat rendered crispy dark. Bitter greens on the plate first, then duck. Then the gastrique, spooned over with a hand so steady it surprised her. This course was about risk, about ingredients at the edge of acceptable, transformed by skill into something transcendent, about not playing it safe, about refusing to apologize. Sarah brought the plate to Ethan herself. He looked up at her. His expression was unreadable. The first course, he said, was exceptional, technically perfect, but safe. Sarah's stomach dropped. This one, though. He cut into the duck, tasted it. This one is dangerous. This is a chef saying I could fail, this could go horribly wrong, but I'm doing it anyway because the alternative is boring. He smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen from him. This is what I was hoping for. Sarah exhaled. The third course, Ethan said. Whatever it is, I'm ready. She returned to the kitchen. The chocolate mixture had cooled to the perfect temperature. Liam had prepared the espresso gelée, dark, shimmering, bitter as memory. Sarah folded the chocolate into molds, added the gelée on top in a thin layer, finished with flaked sea salt and a single drizzle of olive oil. It was deconstructed, chaotic. Nothing like the refined plating of a traditional dessert. It looked like a broken thing, reassembled. It looked like her. Liam, she said quietly, bring this to Mr. Caldwell. Tell him. She paused. Tell him this is what survival tastes like. Liam took the plate with reverent hands. Sarah watched him go. Then she closed her eyes and waited. Pause. When she opened them again, Ethan was standing in the kitchen doorway. That dessert, he said, is the most honest thing I've tasted in a decade. Sarah couldn't speak. You did it, Ethan continued. 3 courses, 1 hour. And every single one told me something true about who you are. He stepped closer. You're not just talented, Sarah. You're necessary. This industry needs chefs like you. People who cook like it matters. Like it means something. What happens now? Her voice was barely a whisper. Now? Ethan pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. Now we dismantle everything Gustav and his uncle built on your family's grave. The screen showed a legal document, transfer of ownership. Lubli Restaurant Group, all 12 locations, sold to Caldwell Holdings, LLC. I bought controlling interest 3 months ago, Ethan explained. Quietly, through intermediaries. I've been waiting for the right moment to make changes. He looked around the kitchen. Starting here. I'm shutting down Lubli. Sarah's heart sank. But the staff will be transferred to the new restaurant I'm opening in this space. Ethan smiled. It's called The Hearth, and you're going to be the executive chef. 1 year later. The Hearth NYC opened on a Tuesday night in September. The space had been completely transformed. Where Lubli had been all cold marble and pretension, the Hearth was warm, exposed brick, soft lighting, an open kitchen where diners could watch the chefs work. Sarah stood at the pass, calling orders. Firing 2 beet salads, 1 duck, 3 pastas. Liam, how's that risotto? 2 minutes, chef. Chef. She still wasn't entirely used to hearing it. Some mornings she woke up expecting to be back at the dish station, hands in gray water, invisible. But then she'd see her reflection. Her chef's whites, clean and pressed. Her name embroidered on the chest. Sarah Miller, executive chef. The dining room was full. Ethan had insisted on a quiet opening, no press, no fanfare, just food and the people who mattered. Liam had been promoted to sous chef. Marcus ran the line. Sophie handled pastry. Arthur had stayed on as GM, different now. Calmer, like he'd remembered how to breathe. The rest of Gustav's old staff had scattered, some to other restaurants, some to culinary school, tuition paid by Ethan's foundation. And Gustav himself? Serving 12 years for arson, manslaughter, and fraud. His uncle got 15. The investigation had uncovered everything. The bribery, the falsified reports, the systematic destruction of a family for profit. Sarah's name had been cleared. Officially. Publicly. But more than that, she'd been restored. Not just her reputation, herself. The orders kept coming. Sarah moved through the kitchen with the same quiet confidence she'd once had at the original hearth. Before the fire, before the grief. But different now, harder, wiser, scarred in ways that made her better, not weaker. At table 7, the same table where Ethan had sat 1 year ago, a young couple was celebrating an anniversary. The woman was crying as she tasted the chocolate dessert. "This tastes like coming home," Sarah heard her whisper. Sarah smiled. That's what she'd wanted. What she'd built into every dish, every menu, every single choice. Home. Not the romanticized version. The real thing. Complicated, painful, beautiful, true. At the end of service, after the last table had been cleared and the kitchen cleaned, Ethan appeared. He did this sometimes, checking in, making sure she had what she needed. "The Times is coming next week," he said. "Food critic. I tried to delay them, but it's fine." Sarah was surprised to realize she meant it. "Let them come. You're ready?" "I think so." Ethan studied her. "You know, I've been thinking about what my grandmother said, about the 3 chefs who cook with truth." "Yeah?" "I think she was wrong about the number." He smiled. "There are more than 3. They're just hard to find. Because the industry, like you said, tries to destroy them." He gestured around the kitchen. "But when they survive, when they make it through the fire and come out the other side," he met her eyes, "they change everything." Sarah looked around the hearth. Her kitchen, her team, her second chance that had cost everything but had been worth every scar. "My father used to say something," she said quietly. He'd say, "Baby girl, cooking isn't about feeding people. It's about showing them they're worth caring for. That their hunger, physical, emotional, spiritual, matters." He was right. "Yeah." Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. "He was." She thought about him often, wondered what he'd think of this place, of everything that had happened. But she knew. Somehow, she knew. He'd be proud. Not because she'd succeeded, not because she'd been vindicated, but because she'd kept cooking, even in the dark, even when no one was watching, even when it would have been easier to walk away. She'd kept the fire burning. And in the end, after everything, that was what mattered most. Sarah turned off the last burner, hung up her apron, and walked out of the kitchen that finally felt like home.